Consider this video part of the ongoing material and what amounts to my dead man switch. After World War II, a funny thing happened. All the empires of Europe had destroyed themselves, leaving open a power vacuum. The United States, which had the blessing of geographic isolation, 2 giant oceans protecting it and 2 peaceful nations on its borders, was unscathed after the war. So instead of having to fight for an empire, like Alexander the Great did with Greece or Darius with Persia, the empire just kind of fell into its lap. Speaking of Darius the Great, an abiding threat to his vision of empire were occasional nationalist uprisings, which posed a threat to his imperial rule. These had to be crushed ruthlessly from his perspective. Local people, whose organizing principle was their ethnicity, culture, or heritage, had to be suppressed. Self-rule could never be tolerated. And this might break out if people had a sense of themselves. Dictators all throughout history have seen this as their one abiding duty, to impose diversity programs as a method to fracture the society and make their rule easier. For Aristotle, democracy is only possible with homogeneous ethnic groups, while despots have always reigned over highly fragmented societies. A multi-ethnic society is thus necessarily anti-democratic and chaotic, for it lacks philia, this profound flesh and blood fraternity of citizens. Tyrants and despots divide and rule. They want the city divided by ethnic rivalries. The indispensable condition for ensuring a people's sovereignty resides in its unity. Ethnic chaos prevents all philia from developing. Getting back to World War II, we assume that we won it. But did we? Did we really? Before World War II, we had the Republic. But afterward, we were offered an empire in its stead. The problem with a global control syndicate is that the people in charge no longer operated with the goal of bettering the United States. Instead, America became only a small component within the larger grid, and in fact, if the people agitated for sovereignty and self-rule, this would pose a problem. The solution? Promote ethnic chaos, division, erase any consciousness of a coherent people or culture, and all possibility for them organizing for their own self-interest would disappear. German Chancellor Angela Merkel made this point when she was speaking at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Berlin. She said, quote, "Nation-states must today be prepared to give up their sovereignty." She then goes on to mention mass migration and to say that the notion of a republic relies on the will of the people. But how can the German Republic move according to the wishes of the German people, if there is no German people? She said there were politicians who believed that they could decide when these agreements were no longer valid because they were representing the people. She added, but the people are individuals who are living in a country. They are not a group who define themselves as the German people. This is part and parcel of the thinking we see in the article, EU should undermine national sovereignty, says UN Migration Chief. We read, the EU should do its best to undermine the homogeneity of its member states, the UN Special Representative for Migration has said. Peter Sutherland told peers the future prosperity of many EU states depended on them becoming multicultural. This brand of globalism is being taught at universities now, as one can see by books like Melissa Lane's The Birth of Politics, where we read, politics requires unity. Think of the classic contrast between hawks and doves. Left to themselves, 2 such groups might routinely clash in ways that further widen the gap between them, for they are unlikely to intermarry or interact, loath to associate with those whom they find temperamentally alien. The danger of citizens finding themselves alien rather than kin to one another, which can spur civil war, is perhaps the deepest political danger of all. The statesman's role as described in the end of the dialogue is precisely to set up educational bonds and to encourage intermarriages. We might think more broadly today of all kinds of social interaction and diversity policies that can avert that danger. It might bear pointing out that hawks and doves don't have clashes, as she calls them. Doves never attack hawks. The predation only happens in one direction. So if her metaphor is to be understood, she's advocating for predatory groups coming into the West being given the spoils of conquest, the resources, and yes, the women of the people that they have vanquished. So she sees the role of statesmen to promote intermarriages to facilitate the process, a lesson obviously taken to heart by France's former president, Nicolas Sarkozy.
Quel est l'objectif? Ça va faire parler, mais l'objectif, c'est relever le défi du métissage. Défi du métissage que nous adresse le XXIe siècle. Ce n'est pas un choix, c'est une obligation, c'est un impératif. On ne peut pas faire autrement, au risque de nous trouver confrontés à des problèmes considérables. Nous devons changer, alors nous allons changer. On va changer partout en même temps, dans l'entreprise, dans les administrations, à l'éducation, dans les partis politiques. Et on va se mettre des obligations de résultat. Si ce volontarisme républicain ne fonctionnait pas, il faudra alors que la République passe à des méthodes plus contraignantes encore.
So we're at a point where the empire represents not just an existential threat to the republic, and every republic, but to all the peoples who composed those republics and whose unique expression they were. We see this betrayal of the republic for the advancement of the empire by our own senators, who recently snuck a mass amnesty rider into the infrastructure bill. Their goal is no longer for the good of the people, but the good of the empire. And if the people get in the way, well, then the people will just have to go. In the 1600s, John Locke wrote in two treatises of civil government, whenever the legislators endeavor to take away and destroy the property of the people, or to reduce them to slavery under arbitrary power, they put themselves into a state of war with the people, who were thereupon absolved from any further obedience. Has the government started to wage war upon the people? Has the government that was once constituted to defend the people's rights been so perverted as to now systematically take measures to erase and replace them? I end this video where I started, pointing out that after World War II, all the European empires had destroyed themselves, as all empires eventually do. A note of warning to the cheerleaders of American empire. Could reading the new American magazine boost your heart health, support your immune system, and help you lose 20 pounds of unsightly fat? The answer is no. But you should read it anyway. It'll keep you informed and provide information that cuts through the noise of lesser news outlets. TheNewAmerican.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on social media and hit that like button.